So today I'm going to be doing a video review of the Rollei AFM35 35mm point and shoot camera. This camera is actually designed by Fuji, or Fujifilm rather, and it is a variant of the Fujifilm Klasse, the original Klasse. That's K-L-A-S-S-E. And when I say variant, I really shouldn't say that. What I mean to say is that it's the exact same camera. The only difference between this camera and the Klasse is the lens coating, which this has the Rollei HFT coating, which is said to be the exact same coating as the Carl Zeiss T-Star coating. Now, as far as I know, though, the lens design and the way the elements are designed by Fujifilm and are identical to the Fujifilm Klasse. It should be noted that the Fujifilm Klasse has a couple other variants, the newer Class S and the newer Class W. The S is real similar to this in that it has a 38mm lens, and the W, I believe, has a 21mm lens. It's wider. W means wide. Anyway, back to this camera. I had actually owned this camera once before, and I had sold it in favor of a Contax T2. Now, the reason I decided to go back to this camera is that the Contax T2, while it's a terrific camera and when it's in focus it's sharp, one thing that people don't seem to want to talk about is that it misses focus a lot. I would say 1 in 5 were, with the Contax T2, were missed focus. So anyway, I decided to go back to this one because when I had previously owned it, the thing never missed focus. Some differences between this and the Contax T2 are that this does not have exposure compensation. This has a bracketing feature where it will take the metered picture as it should, and then one step down and one step up. You can actually also do a half step down and a half step up. So it's got a bracketing feature, but not an exposure compensation feature, which when going with the Contax T2, I thought that's what I wanted. I thought that's what I needed. But since I'm going to be shooting mostly color negative film in this thing anyway, it's going to have a ton of latitude. I'm not really going to worry about exposure compensation too much. So anyway, this has a 38mm f2.6 lens, so it's a little faster than a 2.8 lens. It's kind of unique in that I've never seen a point and shoot with a 2.6 lens. It says it's an S-Apagon design. It says Rollei Germany in front, and it's got that red HFT, which again goes back to the lens coating, which is supposedly the same as the Carl Zeiss T-Star coating. This dial right here is an autofocus dial. So right now it says AF. It's an autofocus. So if you press this little button, it's a lock button, and then change that focus, then you can manually focus this thing. So in the viewfinder, there's really there's nothing that tells you where you're focused. So it doesn't say you're at 10 meters, 7 meters, 5 meters in the viewfinder, but you've got your indicators right there. I personally don't manual focus this thing. I have a point and shoot so I can point and shoot, not so that I can manually focus it. So its exposure modes are basically program. So aperture and shutter speed are automatic, and also aperture priority. So you can choose your aperture. So that's done with the power dial here. It's in the off position. The first position is program, and then everything after that is a chosen aperture. So what I really like about this camera is that again, I keep comparing this to the Contax T2 because, and the reason for that is because I kind of chose this one over the T2, and I was basically between those two cameras. And the reason I chose it is that it's a little smaller, it's a little easier to hold, it's much lighter. I don't think it's as well built as the Contax T2. You know, some pieces are plastic. I think some of the front parts are plastic, but it's still, I think the top part is metal. I think the back door is metal, but it's still a very durable camera from what I've seen so far. It's easier to hold. It's got kind of this rounded edge, and the Contax T2 is a little bit more boxy, kind of like a bar of soap. and that's why I chose this over the T2. I think the lens is beautiful. It's really sharp. I think very comparable to the Contax T2, and a lot better than any other point and shoot I've owned. And comparing it to, for example, the Olympus Stylus Epic or the Mu 2, I think this lens is much more beautiful, much more sharp, and the fact that this has aperture priority is really nice too. Now on the back here, you can have the date stamped onto the picture. I don't really do that. I never have. Also, there is your mid-roll rewind, so you can poke that with a pen. And if you want to rewind your roll, in the middle of the roll, you can just push that button there. I've got a roll of film in there now. The flash, by default, and I know this drives a lot of people crazy, when you turn it on by default, the flash is always in auto mode. Some people want the flash off when they turn it on. The Class S and the Class W have a custom function where you can make it default so that the flash is off when you turn it on. The S and the W, because they're newer, also have a few other custom functions. One little quirk of this camera, which I've never really seen in another point and shoot, is that when you half press the shutter button, the lens assembly will move to its focus point, and there's a split-second delay there. I'm going to show it to you. So I'm going to press it, and if you heard that little zip, you can hear that there is a delay between when you half press the shutter button and when it locks focus. And in the viewfinder, you'll see a green light or a blinking green light or whatever. The solid green light will mean that it's in focus. Blinking green will mean that it's not in focus. So I'll do that again. Half press of the shutter, and there is a delay between when you half press the shutter and when the lens locks focus, at which point it's locked focus. You can basically focus and recompose if you want and take your picture. So that's basically it about this camera. You know, the things I like about it are the great lens, pretty fast autofocus, even though I showed you that delay, you know, in shooting with it in practical, real world, outside and indoor purposes, that delay really doesn't bother me. Most point and shoots have that delay anyway. It's just that the delay is after you do a full press of the shutter. So so with this, I guess that's an advantage. You could call it a quirk, but it could be seen as an advantage in that once you half press the shutter and it locks focus, there is absolutely no delay from the full press to when the shutter opens. And that's basically it. That concludes the review of this camera. I might, if I think of some other things, I might amend them to this video and do a little write-up of it. Please subscribe, and thanks very much for watching.